How do I become a software engineer? How do I learn React? How do I improve the test coverage, or obviously the one I'm getting a lot the most recently? How do I contribute to open source? So your goal is to get to this outer rim, but we're just a tiny little dot in the middle here. If your goal is to make money, set that as your goal. Go figure that out somewhere else. But if your goal is to be a passionate engineer that builds cool shit, start by picking things to build. I hope that this doesn't offend anybody. The goal of this rant is not to offend. And if it is calling anybody out in particular, it's myself. I definitely sucked at these things throughout my career. And I found that the times I was most successful and happy with what I was doing is the times where the goals that I set existed outside of the patterns I'm going to show here. There's a lot of easy pitfalls that I find early devs falling into when they're trying to figure out what to do with themselves, how to set goals, grow, and succeed in their own various ways. It's a little too easy to set goals that aren't going to get you where you want to be. Engineer goals should, as often as possible, be specific and pointed deliverables for things you can create. But I find engineers tend to set much more lofty, indirect goals that aren't really achievable. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of different types of goal setting that I see. A common one, I want to be an engineer, or I want to learn React, or I want to improve test coverage. Our recent favorite, I want to contribute to OSS, open source software. All of these goals suck. And I get asked questions around these things all the time. Like, how do I become a software engineer? How do I learn React? How do I improve the test coverage? Or obviously the one I'm getting a lot the most recently. How do I contribute to open source? I think the things on the right here are bad goals. If you draw like a block out and we just literally cover everything there, be an engineer isn't a goal. It's a place you get to at some point, but not by driving there. Learning React isn't a thing that can be measured. Like I haven't learned all of React. I'm at maybe like 60 to 70%, but I'm pretty fucking good at React. I think most people would say I've moved past learning React. Improving test coverage is vague and not direct around the problems that you're having, and doesn't have like, it has a metric you can measure, which is the code coverage higher, but when do you stop? When have you succeeded with that goal? And contributing to open source is just the straight up wrong way to go about it. All of these goals are not the thing that you work towards. These goals all suck because they don't have starts and ends that are clear. In particular, ends that are clear. Like, when have you succeeded in becoming an engineer? When have you succeeded in learning React? When have you succeeded in contributing to open source? This one is a little easier. Like, once you've contributed to open source, you've done it. But when have you satisfied your own urge? Because you could go like make your own code base. That's contributing to open source in an open source GitHub repo. These are things where it is unclear when you have succeeded at the goal you have set. You could have arbitrary points like, I'm an engineer when I get a job as an engineer. I've learned React when, I don't even know how you'd set a goal for like a point at all. It's pretty bad. So how can we improve on these goals? Let's say I had the goal of, I want to learn React. Let's break this one down further. So we'll start with this top level goal of, I want to learn React. What does this mean to you? The first question I'd ask is, what does learning React mean? Like, what's the end goal? It's probably something like, I want to be able to build a thing or an app with React. Or maybe it's, I want to get a job using React. These two goals are very, very different. And depending on which you ask me, I'm going to give you very, very different recommendations. So let's say we want to start with, I want to be able to build an app with React. Cool. Let's start with this. Now that we want to be able to build an app with React, what should we do from here? First thing we should do is ask yet another question. What type of app do you want to build? Do you want to build like a mobile game? Do you want to build a Twitter clone? Anything, which is what I see a lot of people pick. You're fucked. Pick specific things. So let's say you're a big Twitter fan. Maybe your like goal is to work on Twitter or something like it someday, like long term. But you might want to, how do I put it? Like you see an app like Twitter, you're like, this is cool. I really want to understand how this works. I want to be able to build things like this. So let's say you've decided you want to build a Twitter clone. What do you do now? Start with a tutorial, ideally something that is, if it can be, close to that. You might even find on YouTube building a Twitter clone from scratch or something like that. Start from there. But what I'm pushing here is take that top level imaginary goal of I want to learn React and ask yourself more questions until you get to a deliverable thing. So in this case, you want to build a Twitter clone, or maybe you have a video game you like and you want to build a calculator for the video game that you're playing. Like I used to play a lot. Let's pick a game I'm playing right now. I really like Outriders, and in Outriders there are random chances of gear dropping. I might want to see how likely is it that I will have gotten this piece of gear after a certain number of runs. I could build a web app where I plug in those numbers and click a button after every run. And then I know when I've succeeded. When I have a web app that solves the problem I have succeeded. Building goals around specific problems you can solve will make delivering on them significantly easier. So to go back to the I want to contribute to open source example, you don't contribute to open source by wanting to do it. There are people who have done that and they've succeeded. I'm not going to say otherwise. There's also people who just wanted to be an engineer and they succeeded. I think you'll be much more successful if you pick goals that are more deliverable. So if you keep on your mind that you do want to take opportunities to contribute to open source, keep that in the back of your mind and dig into more other stuff, like work with more things. If you like open source and you want to be more involved in it, start by being more involved in it. Use more new packages, try more new things, read Twitter and see what's going on. Jump in when there's something you can do. Like if there's a package you're using and the document or the docs for it have a typo, or there's an example that's not particularly clear, or there's a bug or an issue in there that you think you understand and can make a change for, do it. That's the point to get involved. The contributing to open source, this isn't the goal that you start with. This is the place you end up. And your goals should be things that get you in that direction, that eventually land you there. Goals should be deliverables. And if you are building or using things that are open source and there are things you want to change about them or problems you have or literally anything else that you could theoretically contribute at that point, do it then. But set the specific goal of solving the problem in that project that you're already using. If you start from a point of genuine interest in the project and then contribute, it's going to go a lot better than starting with the goal of contributing and then picking a project. I think Hacktober gets this particularly poorly, where they expect you to tag repos as beginner friendly and Hacktoberfest ready. They encourage people who have no idea what the project is to search by the tag and just throw contributions, hoping something merges. That's the opposite of both good goal setting and meaningful contributions. The most meaningful contributions come from people who are using the thing and are interested in the thing. The best way to contribute is to get interested in those things. The best way to learn React is to build things with it. The best way to improve test coverage is to write tests around the things that are breaking. And the best way to be an engineer is to build shit. All of these goals have deliverables that are much more focused that will get you to these things, but you can't set the end of the path as be an engineer and expect to know which direction to run. Because be an engineer and contribute to open source are vague enough endpoints that you don't know how to get there just yet. And picking goals that have points you can get to will make life a lot easier. A framing I like to use when I think in this way is my favorite circles. So this outer circle, we'll make it green. We'll call this goal. Or like, I'll say goal. I think I prefer aspiration, which is what I'm seeing with the types of goals I'm talking about. So in this case, we'll say that the aspiration here, I'm just gonna put that in the corner for like color coding. The aspiration here is contribute to open source. So your goal is to get to this outer rim, but we're just a tiny little dot in the middle here. Just give us a nice color. So there's a little dot in the middle. This is you, a new dev. And you're in this tiny little spot in the middle. And your goal is to get to this outer rim. So you can go this way. You can go this way. You can go this way. There's a lot of different ways to go from the middle here to contributing to open source. I see people doing this chaotic path a little bit too often. Especially if I change this from contribute to open source to be a developer. If your goal is to be a developer, you're probably on this chaotic path if this is the top level goal you set. So how do we improve this? How to be a developer? Let's set a goal, or we'll go back to the contribute to open source. So let's say this is like the aspiration you want to work towards. I'm going to delete all these arrows. A good first goal, and I want to be clear, this is no longer, I want to be clear about a big difference that you're going to see in how these parts look. Instead of a goal that's like a big circle you're trying to get to, pick a point. This point could be build something with Deno, let's say. So you want to build something with Deno. So set this as a first goal. We'll do that. Now we are building or have built something with Deno. Let's be more specific. Build chat server with Deno. Build something with Deno would have been a more open circle, like one of these, and build a chat server with Deno would have been on it. You can set that goal, but it's pretty hard to pick a direction at that point, and you have to stay focused on that direction. A better first goal could be finish Deno or go through Deno tutorial. And then your next goal could be, I copy pasted. There we go. Your next goal could be build chat server with Deno. And that can get you from here to here. And then maybe you have a bug that you find in the WebSocket implementation, or the docs are wrong. Update Deno WebSocket docs. Ta-da. You're now an open source contributor. And you got there by setting more specific goals. You wanted to contribute to open source. There was a tutorial you liked. Go through the Deno tutorial. You decided you wanted to build a chat server with it. So you build the chat server. You run into an issue in the docs where the docs are out of date or something. So you file a PR to fix it. And all of a sudden, you're now an open source contributor. And this could go so many different ways. Let's say when you're reading the tutorial, you find a bug or you find a mistake in the tutorial. You can file let's copy paste this, update Deno tutorial. Like once you've set a more specific goal of go through the Deno tutorial, more specific goals can come out of that you can pick. Things like building a chat server with Deno or updating the Deno tutorials. Like these goals help you get to this outer aspiration of contributing to open source. This is the case for most of those top level goals people set. Like if we think through, I want to learn React, depending on how you define learn React, the outer circle could be bigger or smaller, but you don't get there by just aimlessly walking and hoping you hit one of those walls eventually. You get there by picking goals that help you get there. And those goals aren't necessarily picked because of that aspiration. They're picked because there's things that you want to do, usually. And picking and going after those things is how you get to these higher aspirations. not by having the raw desire. So instead of, I want to be an engineer, even if you're so lost that you don't know what the next step is, you've for whatever reason decided engineering's the thing you want to do. First off, think about why. If the answer is money, the only reason you're interested in any of this stuff is money. You're a beginner, you've never written any code, you don't think you're going to like it, but you know there's money there. So you're here for that. Close my stream. Danny Thompson has a space on Twitter right now about how to like get your first dev job. Ignore literally everything I have said, everything I ever have said and will say. If your goal is just to make money in the field and not enjoy yourself, my stream is not useful to you. And that is fine. I'm not saying there's a flaw in you. I'm saying there's arguably a flaw in me. I'm insane and I've chosen to throw away a $400K a year salary to dick around on Twitch and run a company. There's something wrong with me. If you want to love your job and enjoy engineering and be as passionate as a lot of the people here are, ignore Danny Thompson's space and hang out here. But if your goal is make money, cash out, retire, and never code again, fuck off. And I mean that politely. I don't mean fuck off, I don't like you. I mean fuck off, we probably won't get along. That's a flaw in me, not you. Go somewhere where there will be better advice for you. Cool. I care way too much about everything about engineering. I genuinely love this stuff. And if your goal is to make money, set that as your goal. Go figure that out somewhere else. But if your goal is to be a passionate engineer that builds cool shit, start by picking things to build and work backwards from there. Let's say to go back to the standard circle, I'll just copy this and delete most of it. Let's say the vague aspiration on top is, I want to be an engineer. We have our vague goal on top. If you a new dev and you pick a lower level goal, like a lower level aspiration of, let me copy, I guess, put this lower, learn React. So you have the greater aspiration of being an engineer. You have an aspiration that's slightly smaller of learning React, but you're a new dev. You have no idea what you're doing. So let's pick a first goal, which is build a Twitch clone. And you start working on this. And then you realize that React isn't like helping you here because the hard parts aren't the UI, it's the infrastructure. You might go this way, which gets you further away from here, but slightly closer. I guess I almost want to like change this from a circle on the outside here to like a half circle almost to represent that like you can get to the other side other ways. So we have like this half circle here of you want to learn React. So you can try building a Twitch clone, run into some bugs and like infra problems. So you start learning or build WebRTC. Pick something a little vaguer. Learn about WebRTC. Realize WebRTC sucks. Build calculator. And then out here, I'll put show off Twitch clones UI in interview. Talk about WebRTC2. And land your first job. So now, because you, a new dev, picked a actually rough goal of, I want to build a Twitch clone as my first project. You get in there pretty far. You realize like, oh, I figured out some of this React stuff, but I keep like the video sucks. So you take a turn here, which gets you further away from React. But what's important is you're still getting closer to your goal here of being an engineer. It'd honestly probably be a little more fair to put this like here because it's less far. And I want to represent that because you have made progress when you take that left turn. The progress isn't towards the sub goal of learning React. Like, that's the important thing. When you pick these like lower level goals or like these like higher level aspirations, it's okay to ignore them. It's actually pretty good to ignore these as much as you can in favor of more immediate deliverables. Things like, I want to build a Twitch clone. I want to figure out why the WebRTC for my Twitch clone isn't working. Yeah, learn about WebRTC is not a great goal. Learn enough WebRTC RTC to have video working, kind of. That's like the thing I should have written. Or give up. I'm even going to add that because it's actually okay if this goal is something you give up on because your aspiration was learn React. And now you find yourself deep in the weeds on this other thing that isn't React. You are becoming a better engineer as you learn this, even if it like feels like a regression. It's a regression from learning React, but it is progress in the sense that you are becoming more of an engineer as you learn about these things, how they work, their strengths, their weaknesses, etc. And then from there, you give up and you build a calculator instead. And then you talk about all of these things in an interview. Talking about failures in interviews is phenomenal. One of the biggest signals I have for a successful engineer is not how many huge things they've built successfully. It's how they handle failure, how they talk about, reason about, and plan around failure. And if you have, you set these specific goals, you fail all of them, and then you show up in an interview and you talk about them, even if every single one of these parts you outright did not succeed, if you show up at the interview and you talk about those things in a meaningful way, that sounds like you're figuring this stuff out, I probably hire you still. And I can't imagine anybody would say that a full-time paid eng is anything other than like an engineer. TLDR, engineers treat aspirations like goals. Aspirations are not goals. Aspirations are not a thing you should be working towards. Goals are the things you should be working towards, and goals should have deliverable ends. And ideally, those goals get you closer to your aspirations. But if you have immediate goals that don't be afraid to take them. Aspirations are not a good driver. Goals are a fantastic driver, and aspirations in engineering are way too vague to target directly. If any one of these things is your specific goal, you're going to be stuck in an aimless place pretty often because it's impossible to know when you've become an engineer, when you've learned enough React, when your test coverage is good enough, or your contributions are meaningful enough. The way you know those things is by getting there, solving other problems, and achieving other goals. I definitely see a lot of less junior devs struggling with these things still. I've been surprised at how arbitrary of goals I've seen more senior engs set. Things like improve the file structure. Goals and tickets are definitely different, and I agree people suck at estimation. I can see why y'all would think that was what I was going to talk about here, but that definitely wasn't plan here. Like I very specifically wanted to focus on like individual goals, like internalized goals to an extent, and ideals. Like there are intrinsic and extrinsic goals to an extent, where intrinsic goals are I want to be, or I want to do, or I want to learn. Extrinsic goals are I want to create, I want to deliver, I want to complete. They're things that have an endpoint that's clear and agreed upon, whereas aspirations and intrinsic things are like independent, or are like internal things that suck to set as external goals because there's nowhere to go when it's inside like that. Like I want to be an engineer. What you want is probably to feel like an engineer. I want to learn React, which means probably you want to feel like you understand React. And there are plenty of senior engineers, very, very talented, like established people who still suck at picking goals. Like I can't tell you how many like principal engineers have hit me up with questions like, how do I learn your stack? You don't learn my stack. You use it. You build something with it. And then you come to us with questions and we answer the questions. I also love that Aiden has not set goals, which makes a lot of sense. I do think, Aiden, you have goals more than you give yourself credit. Like Fossabot is a thing that is a clear deliverable. You wanted to solve specific problems that high traffic chats on Twitch were having. And you learned what you had to make that happen. And then you had the goal of make the cost reasonable as you host this thing. And you learned a bunch of crazy shit for that. Like picking deliverables instead of arbitrary, like internalized potential places to be will help a ton. That's why somebody like Aiden, like much younger than me and much less tenured than me, is still a much more talented dev than me because his goals are better and his ability to deliver on them is too. A really good talk I did, an interview a while back with Jason Dockton from the URAD project. He learned to code because he wanted to contribute to his charity, and paying external like developers to build their website was too expensive and Squarespace was too shit. He taught himself how to code with the very specific goal of making his website for his charity and the specific things they need to do, like the donation systems, the integrations, all of those things. And with that goal in mind, he was able to learn and deliver so much more effectively. And I think that's what I'm pushing for here, is the way that the Aidens and the Jasons of the world got so good so fast. It was by having something else. Like engineering sucks, and the like being an engineer is a bad goal because this stuff kind of sucks. And if that's the thing that you're working towards, you're probably going to give up because it does suck to get there. However, this is the big however, if you have other things on the way there that are exciting, then after spending a night battling your dev environment, trying to get React Native to just spit out an app, after going from forum to forum, trying to figure out why your website isn't loading on mobile, all of these types of problems exist and are going to be things you run into. But man, once you've resolved them, if the thing on the other side is something you're excited about, something you're building towards, something you're proud of, then all the suck actually reinforces how great that thing is. It's the journey, not the destination. But the journey sucks way harder if you don't like the destination. So pick destinations you're excited about and proud of so you can get the distance you're trying to go. I also want to open up the diagram that Aiden made because this is fantastic. Get this up on screen. Yep. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That is a good way of putting it, Griff. I think that a lot of developers, a lot of new developers, people who are just getting started, like it's so easy to get enticed by like the amount of money, like I learned how to code in 3 months and now I make $200,000 a year bullshit. Like that's all imaginary. And if somebody did get there, they probably had other goals that got them there. Someone asked, is passion something you shouldn't rely on? Passion for any one thing, yes. You shouldn't rely on your passion for one specific project to drive you all the way to success, but you should rely on feeding your passion to get you through hard things. Passion isn't a single driver that gets you wherever you want to go. It's a very important force that you can feed into that helps you get through the shitty, hard parts of engineering. And if you consistently, like to go back to the diagram I was drawing, actually, let's say, where did I put it? Here it is. Let's say when you get to the building a Twitch clone, that this ends up sucking and you lose all your passion for working on this thing because of how bad building the Twitch clone sucks. God, I hate this keeps binding. Can I tell it to not? Okay, control lets me not bind it. Nice. So you put all this effort into building the Twitch clone. It sucks. You get pissed off at it. You go a different direction. You get passionate about WebRTC. Let's say you get really into WebRTC and you want to like do more and more stuff with that. That passion will drive you somewhere else, and that's fine. But you should always be seeking something that you're somewhat passionate or excited about, because that will push you through the pain of getting to these hard things. Like if you can theoretically get from here to here with nothing but discipline. Like let's say I have the specific goal of get job at Fang for greater than 100K a year. So you set this specific goal. You can drive straight towards this if you have the fucking discipline and effort and like desire to do it. You'll probably have to take some pit stops along the way, like go to university and shit like that. But if you just study the shit out of how these interviews work, you focus explicitly on like the cracking the coding interview, you find people who work for these companies and talk to them avidly, like with the only thing on your mind being whatever it takes, I need a Fang job for 100K a year or more. You can make that a goal and you can drive there. This is the passionless way to do it. But what's going to happen there is either you burn out before you get there, or even worse, you get there and you have no idea what the fuck to do with yourself once you're there. And I've seen that a lot. People who set their goal to be get the FANG job, and then they do, and now they have nothing else to do with themselves. They're just confused and lost. But if you, throughout your process, set goals that you end up getting excited about or passionate about, even if that passion dies and you pick something else later, now when you get to those hard things, when you get to this point, when you hit your first production bug and you feel like shit, when you set these specific goals and you're doing them in a smaller interval, those failures and those pain points hurt a lot worse, and those wins don't hit any less hard. You'll feel the high of each of these points as you go through it this way, where you might feel it when you get there, but then you have nothing else to do from there. And because you haven't gotten in the habit of setting goals that you can walk towards, you're just, I know so many people who are lost right here, right now. In fact, I've kind of made it a hobby to find these people and help them figure out their lives, because there's a lot of confused people who like went to university, got their job at Microsoft, have been there for 3 years now, and don't know what the fuck to do with their lives. That is surprisingly common. Doctors and lawyers are not only in the same boat, it's basically the only path. And I think, actually, I'm really happy you said that, Jenny. I think that other fields have this as like a necessity. Like, you don't become a doctor by playing doctor on your cat as a kid. You do become an engineer by reverse engineering websites and breaking shit on your parents' computer. Like, engineering and software in particular is a very special field where this indirect path is much more effective than a direct one. Because if you want to be a lawyer, there are very specific paths to get there. If you want to be an engineer, you need to go build shit. Fundamentally different. And I think that people get trapped in the mindset of a lawyer when software engineering is a whole different world. I think we should embrace what makes software engineering special, personally speaking. But I think y'all agree, because there's 500 of you hanging out in my Twitch stream and YouTube stream right now on a Wednesday afternoon, that you could be doing anything else. Y'all care. Act like it. Make the decisions that get you to smaller things that you're more excited about. Even if it doesn't feel like they're working you towards your specific aspirations, you might be surprised. Stop treating our field like we're fucking lawyers. We're not lawyers. We're closer to musicians than we are lawyers. We're much closer to skateboarders than we are lawyers. And I think a big part of why I've succeeded in software is my history in skateboarding. I got good at skateboarding by hitting the ground and getting back up over and over again. My goals in skateboarding weren't be a skateboarder or learn every trick or get good at stairs. My goals in skateboarding were land this trick or kickflip this stair set or do a switch flip that's this tall over this thing. That's why I got good at skateboarding pretty quick. And that was the mindset I brought with me to engineering that got me good at this too. I hope that this was a good rant, because this is one I've been holding in for a while. Because engineers fucking suck at setting goals. Hey, did you know that over half my viewers haven't subscribed yet? That's insane. Y'all just click these videos and listen to me shout and hope that the algorithm is going to show you the next one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, maybe even the bell next to it, so that you know when I'm posting videos. Also, if you didn't know this, almost all of my content is live streamed on Twitch while I'm making it. Everything on the YouTube is cuts, clips, whatever from my Twitch show. So if you're not already watching, make sure you go to twitch.tv/Theo, where I'm live every Wednesday around 2 or 3 p.m. And I go live on Fridays pretty often as well. Thank you again for watching this video. Really excited. Thank you.